Should you settle your debt yourself or hire a company to do it for you? Let's skip the theory and run the actual numbers, because on $30,000 of debt, the difference between these two paths can be several $1,000s in your pocket. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that convenience is costing you and whether it's worth it for your situation. Let's get into it. Like I said in my other videos, I've been where you are. Maxed out my first credit card young. Nobody taught me how it worked, and I settled that debt myself. Then about 10 years working inside the debt settlement industry. We're gonna use one clean example the whole way through. You owe $30,000 spread across 3 credit cards, and you've fallen behind. We'll walk both paths side by side with real numbers. And remember, every figure I use here is an illustration to show you your math. Your actual results will vary because settlement outcomes depend on your creditors, your timing, and your situation. Path 1, hire a company. Path 2, do it yourself. Path 1, you hire a debt settlement company. They typically charge a fee of somewhere between the range of 15% to 25%. Let's use 20% to keep the math clean. Now, one thing to watch, that percentage can be calculated on your total enrolled debt or on the amount of money you save. And it varies by company, so you always want to read your contract. On $30,000, a 20% fee is roughly $6,000, and that $6,000 is on top of whatever you actually pay to settle the debts. It's the cost of admission before a single account is resolved. Let's say the company negotiates your accounts down to an illustration of about half of what you owed. Again, results vary widely, and I'm just using 50% to show you the shape. Half of $30,000 is $15,000, and that goes to your creditors. Then add the $6,000 fee. Your total out of pocket is about $21,000. And along the way, you had far less visibility into your own situation because the company was in the middle of everything. Now, path 2, you do it yourself. Same $30,000 in debt. You build your own settlement fund in an account you control. You use a script to negotiate, and let's say you land in roughly the same ballpark, around 50%. That's the same $15,000 to your creditors, but the fee you pay to a company, zero. You keep that $6,000. It stays in your pocket. So look at the two side by side. Same debt, same rough outcome on the settlements. Path 1 around $21,000 in total. Path 2 around $15,000. That difference, roughly $6,000 in this example, is the price of the middleman. $6,000 for work that, and I'll show you this, you can absolutely do yourself. For a lot of people, $6,000 is months of income. That's not a small thing to hand over. So what is that $6,000 actually buying? 3 things: the negotiation, the fund structure, and the follow through. Let's take them one at a time, because once you see how simple each one is, the fee starts to look very different. The negotiation is a phone call, a prepared, calm phone call where you know your numbers and you follow a script. The person on the other end is usually a call center employee reading from their own screen. You can have a better script than they do. The fund structure is just a separate savings account in your name that you feed every month. That's it. And the follow through is getting each settlement agreement in writing before you send $1. Prepared call, savings account, get it in writing. That's the $6,000 service. Let's check that the math holds up at a different size, because $30,000 isn't everyone's number. Say instead you owe $9,000 spread across 2 cards at the same 20% fee. Hiring a company runs you about $1,800 on top of whatever gets settled. If both paths land around the same 50% settlement, roughly $4,500 is going towards the creditors either way. Doing it yourself again saves you that $1,800 in fees. The dollar amount is smaller, but the percentage gap is identical. Whatever your actual balance is, that's 15 to 25% fee is the number to run against your own situation before you decide anything. Let's also be honest about where this math changes. If your total debt is small, say about $3,000, a 20% fee is only about $600. That's still real money, but it's a very different decision than staring down $6,000 on a $30,000 balance. The percentages stay the same, but the dollar impact scales with your total debt. So don't just remember the percentage, run it against your actual number, because $600 might generally be worth it to you for the hand holding, while $6,000 almost never is once you see it written down. Here's something people don't expect. Paying the fee doesn't buy you a guaranteed result either. Companies still can't promise what a creditor will accept. Remember that from the red flag conversation. So you're not paying $6,000 for a guaranteed 50% settlement. You're paying it for someone else to make the calls and track the paperwork while you wait. The outcome uncertainty exists on both paths equally. That's an important piece people miss when they're weighing this decision, because it changes what you're actually buying with that fee. You're buying convenience and reduced stress, not a better result. Let me make this real. Picture someone who almost hired a company. They were about to sign $6,000 in fees when they realized their first account they wanted to settle was a $5,000 balance. They made one prepared phone call, nervous, script in hand, and offered a lump sum. The collector countered, they held their number, and they resolved it in writing for a fraction of the balance. One call. And in that moment, they understood the company was going to charge them thousands to make the same exact phone call on their behalf. That's the realization I want you to have right now. Now, let me be fair, because this is not a zero sum. There are real reasons some people still choose a company. If you're drowning in overwhelm, if the calls trigger genuine anxiety, if you truly don't have the bandwidth, paying someone can be worth it to you. And that's a legitimate personal choice. I'm not here to shame anyone, but I want you to make that choice with your eyes open, understanding that you're paying for convenience and hand-holding, not for some elite skill you couldn't possibly learn, because you could learn it. Most people can. And to be just as fair to the other side, DIY isn't free either. It just charges you in a different currency. It costs you time, maybe a few hours a month spread across calls and paperwork. It costs you some discomfort, especially that first call. And it asks you to hold your own discipline on the savings account. Nobody's checking in on you if you skip a month. Those are real costs. They just don't show up as a line item on a fee schedule. If your time is generally worth more to you right now than $6,000 because you're working overtime or caring for someone or just that capacity, that's worth weighing honestly and not dismissing. And here's something most people don't consider. You don't have to pick one path for every account. Some people settle their two smaller balances themselves to build confidence and keep the fee, then decide whether they still want help on a larger, more complicated account. There's no rule that says it has to be done all one way. Treat each account in its own terms and let the math guide its individual decision instead of locking yourself into one approach for everything you owe. And if after all this you decide hiring a company is generally right for you, here's one more thing worth knowing. That fee percentage is often more negotiable than people assume. Companies expect some back and forth on their pricing just like creditors expect on a settlement. It doesn't hurt to ask directly whether there's flexibility on the percentage, especially if you're enrolling multiple accounts at once. Worst case, they just say no, and you're exactly where you started. Best case, you just talked yourself into keeping a few $100 more without doing anything else differently. Let's make this concrete for your specific situation, not just my examples. Pull up your actual total balances across every account you're considering settling. Multiply it by 20%, right in the middle of that 15 to 25% range. And that's roughly what a company would charge you. Now, ask yourself honestly, how many hours would you realistically spend on calls and paperwork doing it yourself? Probably somewhere between 5 to 15 hours total, spread across a few months, not all at once. Divide your fee number by those hours. That's roughly what you're paying yourself per hour to do this on your own. For most people, once they see that hourly number sitting somewhere well over $100 an hour, the decision becomes pretty obvious. That's exactly the gap we built VantagePath to close. It hands you the scripts, the timing signals on when creditors tend to be most open, and realistic ranges of what's been accepted, so you're not guessing and you're not paranoid. And the money never leaves your control. We never touch it. You keep it in your own account and you authorize every payment yourself. So you get the structure and confidence of the company without handing over the fee and without handing over your cash. But again, whether it's our platform or a legal pad and a phone, the math I just showed you is the same. One more thing worth knowing before you decide. Whether you settle through a company or settle it yourself, the credit impact is generally similar, because what matters to your credit report is that the account was settled for less than the full balance, not who made the phone call. Hiring a company doesn't protect your credit any more than doing it yourself does. That's one more piece of the fee that isn't buying you anything extra. If credit impact is part of your decision here, know that it's roughly the same cost on both paths. So it shouldn't be the thing that's tipping you toward paying a fee. So here's how to apply this. Before you ever sign with a settlement company, do the math yourself. Take your total debt, multiply by the fee percentage they're quoting, and that's the number you save by doing it yourself. Write it down, look at it, then ask honestly, is the convenience fee worth that exact dollar amount to me? For some people it will be. For most, seeing that $6,000 rent on a page changes the answer. Let's recap. On $30,000 in debt, hiring a company in this illustration cost about $21,000 total. Doing it yourself cost about $15,000, and that $6,000 gap is purely the fee. The same math held up on a smaller $9,000 example too. What you're paying for is a phone call, a savings account, and getting things in writing, all of which you can do. Hire help if the convenience is genuinely worth the number to you, and never let anyone take your money into their account to do it. If this opened your eyes, subscribe and watch my step-by-step next, where I lay out exactly how I settle $30,000 in debt from month 1 to the final signed agreement. That's the how, in full. I'll see you there. Quick note, I'm not a lawyer or financial advisor, and this is education, not legal or financial advice for your specific situation. Your numbers will be your own.